Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Family Matters interview series. Thank you for choosing to join the presentation tonight, and we are so happy to have you here with us. A few reminders that all lines will be muted throughout tonight's presentation, so you can enter any questions into the chat box, and someone from the BCAT team will respond to you within 2 to 3 business days. We are pleased to have Susie Touchinsky joining us tonight to discuss the topic, when is it time to stop driving? Guidance on how best to handle a very difficult situation. Susie is an occupational therapist, a certified driver rehabilitation specialist, and the owner of Adaptive Mobility Services in Pennsylvania with over 20 years of experience. In her private practice, Susie loves working with clients to support their highest and safest level of engagement in mobility, and also teaches other occupational therapists how to become driver rehab specialists. She is a published author, adjunct professor, lecturer, and mentor. In short, Susie is a self-proclaimed driving geek who uses her training to live her mission of providing exceptional care for all drivers and education for occupational therapy practitioners. Joining Susie is Lynn Young, the Director of Strategic Integration at Mansbach Health Tools. Lynn and Susie, I will turn it over to you.
So welcome, Susie Touchinsky. We're so happy to have you here joining us today for our Family Matters series. I know you are an expert in all things driving. So can you start off by telling our family members a little bit about yourself, your clinical background, and a little bit about the topic of driving? And I know this is a hot topic for family members. We get a lot of questions about this, so your expertise will really be valuable to today's conversation.
Yeah, sure. So the first thing I'd love to share is I'm actually an occupational therapist. I've been an OT for over 20 years. And early on in my career, I was working at Johns Hopkins Hospital and had the opportunity to advance into driving rehab. So now I run my own private practice as an OT and a certified driving rehabilitation specialist. I think that occupational therapists are uniquely skilled for this area, because driving, when we think about driving, it's not just about seeing something or being able to move or react quickly. It's about all the pieces coming together, and it's about what you want to be able to get out and do in the community. So my approach when we talk about driving is, where do you go? When do you go? What roads are you using? And do you have the fitness to drive? Is there a medical condition or a change in your health that's impacting your fitness on the road? Is there something I can do to promote independence while balancing safety? And, if needed, how can I help transition from that driver's seat to the passenger seat? So I really love my approach because it's about empowering independence while thinking about the safety for the individual also.
Right, that makes sense. So Susie, I know a lot of older adults are hesitant to give up driving, right? They want to maintain their independence. They may not want to admit that they're having any physical and or cognitive changes that might impact driving. Can you share with our family members, what are some signs or symptoms of things they might need to be looking for if they think there might be a concern?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say, first and foremost, there's no such thing as a perfect driver, right? Driving.
We've all had our accidents, right? We've all had close calls. So
yeah, we've all had issues. And so I think the first thing we need to think about is, right, we all have a bad day, we all have issues, but are we starting to see a pattern of changes in anything? I think a big concern for me is if an individual starts getting lost driving on familiar roads. Another big concern would be if the driver seems to be slowing down quite a bit, slowing down in the flow of traffic, slowing down to find the turn. If they're having any increase in, dents or dings on the vehicle itself, right? Especially if it's a vehicle that's known to the driver. Certainly when you have a new vehicle, you have different space and dimensions to think about. But, if this is a vehicle they've had and then we start to see little dents and dings or issues. And then, of course, if there's any increase in speeding tickets or accidents as well, those are major concerns. A one-time thing doesn't mean there's a habit or a change. But looking at those and thinking, is it increasing? Is it changing? That's the kind of thing that might signal to me, maybe we need some help. Maybe we need some objectivity to look at what's going on here with driving.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. So we're looking for trends and patterns, and we're looking for things that could ultimately impact safety, it sounds like.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So if someone's listening to this right now and they're thinking, okay, check, I've seen dents and dings, check, I've seen slowing down, do you have any suggestions on how to broach the subject or introduce the idea of a driving assessment? Because I can imagine there may be some resistance to that idea. Talk a little bit about how do you approach someone and kind of show them the benefits of participating in an assessment?
Right. So I think it's a very natural tendency for a caregiver, for a family member to feel responsible for this, right? And the first thing I like to share with people is, decisions, if we talk about driving retirement or transition, that is not the caregiver's responsibility. That is not their decision. Approaching the idea, so if we're noticing changes in how somebody walks, we help them by connecting them with a physical therapist. If we see them falling, we're going to connect them. If we're seeing them struggle in different areas, they're sleepy all the time, we connect them with the doctor for the medications. Think about the driving piece as one more way to get somebody the resources they need to see if there could be something done to make them safer or to improve their functioning. So what I do, so I was going to say, I feel a big role of what I do when I do the driving eval is take the look at the pieces, right? So I look at the different pieces we use for driving, and then I look at how it all comes together, and I provide objectivity to that. So I'm not just going for a ride with your loved one and saying it's good or it's bad. I'm saying, oh, what's going on here is actually a vision piece. What's going on here is a processing piece, right? And we're looking for those patterns and changes. And I think one of the things I see to family members all the time who are thinking about this, they're concerned about it, is, listen, driving is a really important occupation. People love to do this. This is why you're struggling or you're thinking about this decision. There's obviously something that you're concerned about. You should listen to that concern. Let me be the person to objectively look at it, to objectively give it the weight and respect that it deserves, and to help guide those decisions.
I think that people would really appreciate having you on their team to help kind of navigate this journey. It sounds like driving is really a very complex skill. There's a lot of moving parts, so to speak, and skill sets that you need to have. You mentioned your assessment process. Can you tell us a little bit more about what goes into that comprehensive assessment when you're testing individuals to determine, their ability to continue to drive, or if they're looking at driving retirement? What do you do when you meet a new client? Kind of talk us through that process.
Yeah, absolutely. So my comprehensive driving evaluation, in general, this is kind of across the board, takes a couple of hours. I always plan about a 3-hour appointment. We start by getting to know the client. So sitting down and having an interview. I like to go through what they should expect with me, and then I'm there on their side to look at things objectively. Then I'm going to pull in different tests and resources to look at their vision, how their eyes are moving, what their acuity looks like, their visual fields. We're going to do some motor tests. I want to know not just how their legs are moving, but how are their arms moving? What does their coordination look at? I like to use a piece of equipment called a reaction timer. So we have them sit in front of this and they move their foot from the gas to the brake pedal and see how quickly, see how quickly they can do that, right? And then I'll pull in different tests and measures to understand someone's thinking, attention, problem solving, executive function skills. What I'm doing is I'm breaking it down before we get in the car, looking at each skill kind of more independently before we bring it all together. After that, I'll take somebody out into the car with me. We do use a driving rehab vehicle. So that vehicle.
Tell us how that's different from a regular car.
Yeah, so a driving rehab vehicle has an instructor brake in it. You know, and rarely do I need it, but it's there in case of emergencies. The other reason we use the driving rehab vehicle is because of the way the insurance coverage works. You know, so it's covering me as the specialist as well as the driver, which you might not have that if you were using just the driver's vehicle too. I appreciate driving someone else's car is nerve-wracking, right? I don't like to drive a rental car until I'm comfortable.
Absolutely.
If somebody asks me to move their vehicle for them, I'm double checking everything. So the first thing I do is I just give them a chance to get used to the car. Feel it out. We adjust the seat, we adjust the mirrors, we go up and down the street to feel out the brake because everyone's brake is different. And then I like to give my clients the control by having them pick 2 or 3 places to go to and drive me to those places.
So Susie, are you bringing the vehicle to them or are they meeting you at a location to have this evaluation?
So driving rehab specialists are set up both ways. Most will have you come to a hospital setting or an outpatient clinic, and they will leave from there. I'm kind of unique. Hopefully it's a little trend that's starting. I do see my clients from their homes. It takes a little more training by the specialist because if you're going to a hospital setting, they're going to use a standard route and they're going to say, turn here, turn here, turn here. With me, I'm giving a little more trust to my driver. I give them what kind of like the home court advantage. They know the roads a little bit more. But what I find is it helps to eliminate some of the objectivity or some of the objections I might hit in the long run too. You know, so it's not uncommon for someone to say to me, when I was working at Johns Hopkins, it's right off of the Beltway, you know, it's heavy traffic. If I have somebody who lived in the outskirts of Maryland, West Virginia, and they don't get on the Beltway.
Oh yeah, that's a scary experience for any driver, let alone someone who's being tested. I can imagine.
Completely different. Or even if we're on the side roads, you know, the traffic is like the congestion is different. So I like to give people the home court advantage. And what I found is, especially if we're talking about changes because of cognition, those problems come out even if people know the road, but at least they feel like I've given them every chance. You know, I can't give them their car, but I can give them their roads.
Okay, that sounds fair. You know, you're giving them at least something, as much as you can. You're giving them that option.
Yeah, so when we're done, you know, after we drive around to a couple of different places, and along the way, I'm always looking for, is there something unusual that they have to adapt to, right? Is there a delivery truck that is stopped in the middle of the street? Mm-hmm. Is there a construction zone that wasn't anticipated? And then if we don't have something unique, I might say, can you find a gas station for me and pull in, right? I'll give them an extra task to just look at not just how do they do in their routine, but what if something changes or it's different? How do they do?
So Susie, you talked about some of the testing that you do before you get in the car. When you're sitting side by side and they're driving, what are some of the things you're looking at with your skilled eye that you're using to help, weigh in on this comprehensive assessment? What types of real-time driving skills are you looking for?
Yeah, so one of the first things I'm always looking for is their memory. You know, I let them pick the places they're going to go to. And so can they remember, recall, and take me to all those places? On the road, how are they doing scanning their mirrors? How are they doing managing other vehicles? Is it the kind of situation where when we get around other vehicles or a stoplight, we really slow down, or can they keep up their pace? How do you do, I always look at things like a left-hand turn and lane changes, which are a little more complex than just driving down the road, right? So that bringing all the tasks together and being able to manage it safely.
Okay. So at the end of these two assessments, sort of the ones you're doing, the paper pencil assessments that you're doing at the beginning, and then this real-time assessment, how do you, it sounds like a lot of information. How are you kind of pulling all of this together, and how do you present this to your clients? What happens next?
Yeah, so before I leave, the third part is us sitting down with at least one other family member. And I feel really strongly about having a family member present, especially if we're talking about any kind of cognitive change. And also it's just nice to have a second set of ears.
Sure.
So what I like to do then is look at what has happened before we got in the car, what is happening in the car, and where are the patterns, right? Because I told you before, everyone can make one mistake. Like a common mistake in an unfamiliar car is maybe having a little trouble knowing where the sides are and driving in the middle of the lane, or sometimes driving too quickly. And if I see those things, I'm going to give the driver feedback so they can improve right away.
Okay.
But what am I seeing between patterns of what's happened before we've gotten in the car and then in the car? And are those patterns at a point where it's causing a safety risk? One of the common outcomes, if we're talking about memory changes or thinking changes, is how quickly we can notice and respond or process. And so if I'm seeing that the driver's going really slow, having trouble changing lanes, turning, doing things in a timely fashion, and as a result, everyone around them is slowing down, that's a safety concern.
Right? I imagine that would be a concern for sure.
Yeah. So, and I might, maybe in the testing, they were having trouble moving their foot fast enough, or maybe in the testing, they were having trouble with the timed tests, right? And I can see that pattern. We're going to talk about that and then talk about what I recommend from there.
So if your recommendation is they don't necessarily have to retire from driving, but there's some concerns. What does that look like? What do they do next? Can they work on or improve some of these skills and come back to you for a second round of, hey, I've been working on this and now I want to go through this process a second time? How does that look?
Yeah, so part of what I'm weighing is what are the medical conditions and the reason for referral? Is there potential for learning or improving? Is this a bad driving habit that the person has always had?
I know a couple of bad drivers that I'd like to send your way.
Yeah, and a bad habit, is different, right? So I have to think about like what is causing, what am I seeing? An example might be after a stroke, sometimes our understanding of the space around the car can change. So during that evaluation, if I'm noticing that, I'm going to give them a little coaching and seeing, does my coaching, can they use that to improve? So I'm kind of testing out, could training help or not help?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And if I feel like there's potential there, they might come back for training sessions with me. If we're talking about, so one of the things that's really great is that we're starting to understand, thinking and cognition, and we're getting better at diagnosing people earlier in their conditions.
Yes.
So I'm seeing a lot of people who have just seen the neurologist for the first or second time. And what we're doing at this point is we're gathering a baseline. We're looking at how they're doing. And then I work with the neurologist and the team. Do they come back in 12 months? Do they come back in a year and a half? Do they come back in when will I see them again to make sure that the skills are still intact?
So more of a proactive approach as opposed to reactive, where maybe you went out for a ride with your loved one on a Sunday, became really concerned, and so people can reach out to you in both models. If one is to prevent accidents and to be aware that changes may occur and to kind of keep a pulse on that. And then also on the other side, if you have a loved one that, like you talked about at the beginning, you're seeing issues with driving, maybe because you've been in the car or there's damage to the car. So there's really two different ways to kind of reach out and connect. Okay, really
Right.
good information. So if somebody needs to find you, if somebody is out there listening to this now and is thinking, you know, I feel like I have a loved one in my family that definitely either scenario, you know, has been to the doctor, maybe we're monitoring some changes, but we're not, you know, red alert concerned yet, but we want to just keep our finger on the pulse of this. We want to make sure there aren't any concerns or issues. Or on the other side, if they've seen some issues already happen, what do they do to connect to you? How does that process look?
Well, if you're in Pennsylvania or New Jersey, you can call me. I'm at Adaptive Mobility Services. And if you aren't in one of those states, you're beyond, there are driving specialist directories, both on the American Occupational Therapy Association page. And perhaps we can post the links. Is that possible, Lynn?
Sure, absolutely. We'll share that at the end of this, yes, so that people
That's
can find
easier
you.
than me reading off the whole www.
Oh, absolutely.
And then there's another group, the Association for Driver Rehab Specialists, and they have a nice directory. What I would encourage people to think about is if you're seeking out a driving evaluation for a medical reason, it is helpful to work with a medical professional, like someone who's an OT and a driving specialist, because like you just brought up, there are times that it's on the proactive side. And one of the benefits of using somebody like me is driving is the hardest IADL we do.
Oh, for sure.
And if I'm seeing changes there, based on my experience and training, I can talk about if there's other IADLs we need to start thinking about transitioning to the family or getting support for. I'm thinking medication management, money management, in home. You know, it's not uncommon for me, for part of my recommendations, to start to include like home safety considerations also.
So if you see memory concerns or safety concerns with driving, it makes sense that those skills might show up in other tasks and routines, right, that people have throughout their day or their week.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so it can just be one more, you know, I'm providing one more level of resource for these people. So it's really comprehensive and probably more comprehensive than it needs to be, but it's such a great resource. It's such a great resource for so many people to get a good OT comprehensive driving eval.
Oh, absolutely. Susie, I've seen advertisements for things like AAA and AARP offering driving, and it sounds like what you're doing is very different from that. Can you share a little bit about the differences between those services and yours before we close up for today? Because I know if I've seen them, other people probably have as well.
Right. And they're great. And AAA, AARP, they've been around for years. They're well known. They have a variety of driver safety courses, which it never hurts to brush up on those skills. They'll also offer driving screens or driving tests, but that differs from what I do because it's basically like you're going to the DMV to get your driver's test, right? They're not going to do the medical approach of testing the pieces first and then getting in the car. And that individual, while very good with driving, won't have the medical background or training to really understand the conditions, the medications, everything that's going on.
And you're offering follow-up, which is really an important component to this too. So more comprehensive approach, more comprehensive assessment, and then obviously that component to following that person and staying involved with them if needed over time to really help support them as they move through the journey of driving safety.
Yeah.
Great. Well, Susie, this has been so informative. I'm sure all of our family members are really appreciative of hearing about your services, and we're going to put up in the pod here the link to connect with Susie Touchinsky if you're looking to reach out to her. What's your geography again? Where would you be available to folks?
Yeah, so I'm in Pennsylvania and pretty much I'll do anywhere from Penn State east. And then I also cover New Jersey.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks so much for taking your time out today to share your expertise and knowledge with us. This has been really great information, and we look forward to learning more about driving in the future. So thanks, Susie.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, BCAT.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lynn and Susie. Like you said, Lynn, that was really, really helpful information. Here is the link up on the screen for Susie's website, where you can learn more about adaptive mobility services and what they do. I'll just leave that up for a minute so everybody can copy that down. All right. And we would also like to take this opportunity to invite you to become a member of the Enrich Brain Health Program by signing up on our Enrich website. And if you're interested in learning more information about the BCAT Research Center, you can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And I have those links up on the screen for you now. And again, if anybody has any questions, you can type them in the chat box, and a member of the BCAT team will respond to you via email within the next 2 to 3 business days. I just want to thank everybody again for joining this episode of the Family Matters series. And we hope to see you again for our next episode in December, entitled Understanding the Progression of Alzheimer's and Related Dementias Over Time. I'll go ahead and stay in the meeting room for a few more minutes, just in case anybody has any questions. And otherwise, I hope you all have a great night.